House of the Dragon showrunner addresses George R.R. Martin criticisms. Good day, noble viewers of Westeros throne. Imagine crafting an entire universe filled with dragons, deceit, and dynasties, only to watch someone else direct the drama while you sit back thinking, "That's not exactly how I wrote it." Well, that is precisely what just happened. George R.R. Martin, the godfather of Westeros himself, has shared some sharp and spicy thoughts about House of the Dragon. And the showrunner, Ryan Condal, has finally spoken out, like a knight defending his creative castle. But before we dive into this wildfire of opinions, do me and your future self a favor. Subscribe to Westeros Throne and click that notification bell. Because if there is one thing more unpredictable than the Targaryens, it's how fast I drop these deep dive breakdowns into your feed. Now let us unsheath our Valyrian steel and slice into this story. So, here is the setup. George R.R. Martin recently voiced some light but telling criticism about House of the Dragon. And in true Martin fashion, it was not a rant. It was more of a quiet dagger hidden under a smile. He praised the visuals, the performances, and the scope of the show, but hinted that some creative decisions felt off. To him, it was not entirely aligned with the spirit of his original work, Fire and Blood. Martin loves the show, but he still wants that pure, tragic, morally tangled essence of Westeros to bleed through every frame. Ryan Condal, the showrunner and the man holding the leash on these narrative dragons, stepped forward to respond. And instead of denying or dodging, he delivered a calm but firm statement. Condal said that while Martin's insight is always welcome, the series has to stand on its own legs as a modern adaptation. Essentially, he's saying, yes, George, we worship the source, but we are building something that has to live on television, not just on parchment. And that right, there is the spark that ignited this latest fandom firestorm. An author and an adapter, both passionate, both right, and both walking a tightrope over a pit of dragon fire. Now, here is the real intrigue. George R.R. Martin has always been deeply involved in House of the Dragon. Unlike the later seasons of Game of Thrones, where his input dwindled, he's actually on board as a consultant for this one. He gives notes, reviews storylines, and occasionally raises an eyebrow when something doesn't match his idea of Targaryen tragedy. But lately, Martin's comments have carried a certain tone, a reminder that Fire and Blood was never meant to be a straightforward story. It's a history, not a narrative. It's filled with unreliable narrators, conflicting accounts, and bias-laden perspectives. The beauty of it lies in what's uncertain. So when the show simplifies that ambiguity for television, it risks losing the very thing that makes it fascinating. Condal's defense? Television thrives on clarity. You can't spend 20 minutes of screen time arguing over whether Mushroom or Septon Eustace had the better version of events. The audience needs emotional anchors, clear motives, and pacing that keeps the blood pumping. And that's where the creative tension lives, between Martin's sprawling historical tragedy and Condal's sharp episodic storytelling. And let's be honest, if adapting Martin's work were easy, Game of Thrones would have ended differently. Remember that? Yeah, we're all still recovering. This tug of war is not hostility. It's creative friction, the kind that shapes something sharper, stronger, and more refined. Think of it as forging Valyrian steel. The heat and the hammering are uncomfortable, but that's what creates the blade that can cut through mediocrity. Let's also talk about what Martin actually meant with his critique. He wasn't attacking Condal or the show. He was defending nuance. Martin has always said that Westeros isn't about good versus evil. It's about human complexity. It's not black and white. It's grayscale, blood red, and gold. He wants the audience to feel the inner wars of characters, the guilt, the desire, the justifications for cruelty. Condal understands this. In a recent interview, he said, Season 1 was about the setup. Season 2 and beyond will dig into the consequences. That right there tells us he's listening to Martin, but on his own terms. The coming seasons promise to explore not just the spectacle of the Dance of the Dragons, but the emotional wreckage it leaves behind. And that's exactly where the show can thrive, if it learns to balance Martin's slow-burn storytelling with a modern viewer's need for intensity. The challenge is real. Today's audiences scroll, binge, and demand constant payoff. Martin's writing? It's patient. It's methodical. It's like a poison that seeps under the skin instead of blowing up in your face. Condell's task is to translate that subtlety into a medium built on immediacy. It's kind of like turning a 1,000-page epic into a wildfire without losing the poetry in the flames. Sounds impossible? Well, welcome to Westeros. Now, the fandom, of course, took Martin's comments and ran with them like Arya at full sprint. Half the fans screamed, "The show's losing its soul," while the other half said, "Relax, George's critique just means he cares." The internet turned into a full-blown council meeting. Minus the wine, but with way more chaos. And to be fair, the fans are not entirely wrong. Martin's feedback often signals the difference between good storytelling and timeless storytelling. He knows that the heart of this saga isn't just dragons burning cities. It's people burning each other emotionally, politically, and morally. It's the cost of power, the price of love, and the tragedy of legacy. Condell, meanwhile, is doing what every good showrunner must: evolve. He's adapting Martin's mythology to fit not only the screen, but the age. Modern viewers demand pacing, spectacle, and emotional clarity. But Condell also knows that without Martin's moral complexity, the show becomes just another fantasy drama. So the real question is, can these two creative minds coexist without tearing the Iron Throne apart? The answer so far, yes, but with sparks. And those sparks might actually be what keeps House of the Dragon alive and breathing. Because the moment a story like this stops inviting criticism, it stops evolving. You want conflict behind the scenes. It breeds better storytelling on screen. Just look at the greats: Breaking Bad, Succession, The Sopranos. Every one of them had creators debating tone, theme, and philosophy. That's what made them legends. Condell and Martin are doing the same dance. They both want the same thing: a version of Westeros that feels alive. The difference is Martin sees that life in the past, in the melancholy of what once was. Condell sees it in the present, in the spectacle of what's happening now. Together, they're shaping a story that bridges those worlds, the historian's sorrow and the director's adrenaline. And honestly, that might be the secret to House of the Dragon's longevity. Because while Game of Thrones crashed under the weight of rushed storytelling, House of the Dragon seems to be learning from those ashes. Condell isn't just running a show. He's building a legacy under the watchful eye of the man who invented the legacy. Fans should take comfort in this. Thank you for watching, my lords and ladies. Stay tuned to Westeros Throne for more deep dives into the fiery world of dragons, deceit, and destiny. And remember, when kings argue, kingdoms burn, but when creators clash, great stories are born.